Nashtaprayeshu ya bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So today we'll be reading from chapter 2, verse number 61. And it's in the same series like, we've been going about the Sita Pragya. So I'll read the verse and then, like we can read it a few times. Tani sarvani samyamya Yukta asita matparaha Vasehi yasye indriyani Tasya prajna pratishtita Tani sarvani samyamya Yukta asita matparaha Vashehi yasya indriyani Tasya prajna pratishtita Maybe one of the Prabhujis can, read it now and repeat after.
Tani sarvani samyamya Yukta asita matparaha Vashehi yasyendriyani Tasya prajna pratishtita
Tani sarvani sanyamya Yukta asita matparaha Vashehi yasyendriyani Tasya prajna pratishtita
Word for word translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Tani, those senses, Sarvani, all, Samyamya, keeping under control, Yukta, engaged, Asita, should be situated, Matparaha, in relationship with me, Vase, in full subjugation, He, certainly, Yasya, one whose, Indriyani, senses, Tasya, is, Prajna, consciousness, Pratishtita, fixed. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One who restricts his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. That the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful as yogi, as sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all of the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, canto number 9, chapter number 4, verses 18 to 20. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanuvarnene karau harer mandira marja nada dishu Shrutim Chakrayuta Sat Kathode Mukunda Lingalaya Darshane Darshav Tadvritya Gatra Sparshak Nusangamam. Granam Chatat Pada Saroja Saurabhe Srimat Tulsaya Rasanam Tad Arpite Padav Hare Kshetra Padanus Parne Shiro Rishikesha Pada Bhi Vandane Kamam Chadasyena Kama Kamaya Yatho Tamashloka Chadashraya Ratihi. King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and gave his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to holy places which his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to be a matpara devotee of the Lord. The word matpara is most significant in this connection. How can one become matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarish. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, a great scholar, an acharya in the line of the matpara, remarks, Mad Bhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika Swatmadrishti Sulabhati Bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given here. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also describes meditation of Vishnu and not on meditation of the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than the Vishnu form simply waste their time in vain in search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga. Om Ajnanatirandasya Chanantana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganakantam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadut Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwadhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. And we are continuing in the same series about the qualities of Sthita Pragya. So yesterday, Hari Kishore Prabhu, he spoke from verse number 60, and this was the verse. Vatatohya pi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indrayani pramathini harantri prasabham manaha. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they can forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who's endeavoring to control them. So yesterday, we saw, Hari Kishore Prabhu, he explained the past. He kind of just told us about the pastimes, very beautiful pastimes of what happened to Vishwamitra Muni, and then he also, which is actually part of this purport about Durvasa Muni, when Srila Prabhupada speaks here. So what happened? What they're saying in this verse, in verse 60, is the mind, the senses are so strong that it even can carry away the mind of a man who's of discrimination. What does that mean? A man of discrimination means someone who's very intelligent, someone who has a lot of knowledge. So only a person who has a lot of knowledge can discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. So both people, like both Vishwamitra Muni and Durvasa Muni, they were very learned men, that spent like a lot of time meditating. That they had all the siddhis, they had a lot of knowledge, they knew all the Vedas, but yet they could not come. They were they were so carried away by, like in case of Durvasa Muni, he was identifying himself with his false ego. And that's because the senses were controlling the ego. So when you actually identify with the senses, then then you have this false ego. So he thought like he was being insulted by Ambarish Maharaj. So because of that perceived insult, he just he lost his mind, lost control, and he tried to kill. He created the demon who tried to kill Ambarish Maharaj. But because Ambarish Maharaj was a devotee of the Lord protected him. And again, in case of Vishwamitra Maharshi, what happened? He was he could not control the sense of hearing. He just heard. He just heard the tinkling of the bells of the Apsara, Menaka, and then he lost control. And all his penance, was of no use. He completely fell down. But on the other hand, we have example like Srila Prabhupada explains so many times. And in conjunction, he explains with Vishwamitra Muni, he gives us the example of, Haridas Thakur. A beautiful woman, just like Menaka goes in front of Vishwamitra Muni, a beautiful woman comes in front of Haridas Thakur. So what does Haridas Thakur tell her? Please wait, let me just finish chanting. And then, then I'll attend to you. So what happens? He keeps chanting, his mind is completely fixed on Krishna. And so when his mind is completely fixed on Krishna, he is not perturbed. The senses have no effect on him. The senses cannot, since the mind is not it's not a slave of the senses. So you can see like how focusing on Krishna here, helps to control the senses. So now Srila Prabhupada, like at places, it describes like the mind like an untrained horse in a race course. And actually the mind has to be controlled. Like even for any kind of like materials, even for material success or anything, the mind has to be controlled. Like for example, if you want to succeed at work or anything, your mind has to be focused, and you can't just let the senses take over. Let's say, what do the senses want to do? They just want to, the eyes wants to see good things, pleasing things. The ears want to hear like pleasing, maybe some beautiful music. The tongue wants to taste beautiful, nice food. The skin, the sense of touch needs to feel beautiful things. Like we were saying yesterday, all these senses are very strong in human being. Like in certain animals, like some other senses are stronger, but in human being, like all these senses are very, very strong. The mind, it can overcome intelligence, even though intelligence, like in case of both the Maharshis, the mind overcame the intelligence, and intelligence became subservient to the mind. And if it's not controlled, the mind can work like it's like a tsunami. And you can see all these other, even like kings like this demons like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and others. They were very learned, but yet because of their false ego and their senses, they did not surrender to Vishnu. And so somehow or other, we have to like bring the mind under control of the intelligence. Now, Krishna, we understand this very, very well. Like in the sixth chapter in the sixth chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, I'll give you like verse number 34. What does Arjuna tell Krishna? Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavad dritham tasyaham nigraham manye vayor iva sudushkaram. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. To subdue it, it seems to me more difficult than controlling the wind. So what is happening here? It's restless because the mind is always, the senses are pulling it in different directions, from one thing to another. Like you see one thing, after a while you just get bored of it, and then you want to see something else. You hear one kind of music, even though you're enjoying it, that enjoyment comes to an end in like certain period of like after a little period of time. I remember, like I think I might have told this example before. Like when I was like growing up, I used to have some songs, like favorite songs. I used to have this. So I used to have this. Those days we had these tape recorders, little tape recorders. So this I used to the latest songs which are very hit, I would play them, and after a while, I would get just bored of them. I didn't want to hear it again. So I realized that, and then what would I do later? I'd play those songs, but I wouldn't hear them that more than twice a day, or maybe 3 times a day, because I knew like if I heard it more, I would simply get bored. So I didn't want to get bored hearing them. So I would only play it like 3 times. Or maybe like 2 or 3 times. So next day I could hear it again. So even at that point, at that time, even though I didn't know anything of the Bhagavad Gita and all, I knew like the material enjoyments. After a while, it just, it doesn't give you any taste anymore. It just ends and whatever. So I could relate that with my taste in those songs. So you can understand all this, everything. Like even if you like, let's say you're eating the gulab jamun, the first gulab jamun is very tasty. The second one is tasty, but not so tasty. The third one is like, oh no, you don't want to eat it anymore. Same thing, anything with sense gratification, any kind of like sense gratification, eventually like, you don't want to do it. Also, on the other hand, what happened, like, because of this not able to get any kind of pleasure from the senses, it wants more and more, even different things. It wants more, and it's always looking for newer ways to enjoy. So what does that happen? That creates greed, that creates lust, that creates envy, that creates anxiety, fear, and then again it just creates attachments to those pleasure objects. And then what happens? And sometimes we start identifying like with we started identifying with some country, some religion, some race. These are all because these are all because of the like subtle senses, like the mind, intelligence, and false ego are also called the subtle senses. And without proper knowledge, they also act in a way that we start identifying with wrong things. And all this, the mind becomes very, the mind doesn't know how to discriminate. So that's where the intelligence comes. And intelligence needs to get proper knowledge. And how is that proper knowledge got? The proper knowledge is got by, understanding the Veda, understanding the Shastras. Without understanding the Shastras, like we don't have proper knowledge, and then the mind is, the intelligence cannot discriminate, and then the mind takes over. But even then, like we just now, even if you're learned and the senses are very strong, they could just go, like they could lead you to in the wrong direction. So that's what like Krishna is telling, Arjuna is telling Krishna, like the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. And to subdue it, it seems to be more difficult than controlling the wind. So how does Krishna reply to him? And thus this chapter number 6, 35th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Samshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha grihate. The blessed Lord said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is also possible by constant practice and by detachment. So what is like Krishna is calling Arjuna here Mahabaho. So what is implying is like, you are like almighty armed one. You defeated the bravest of the warriors. Can you not defeat the mind? Like Krishna does not actually deny the problem. Like, he could have said, oh, Arjuna, you're stupid. But so Krishna is recognizing there is a problem. Like the mind is very strong and it has to be controlled. But then it says it is possible. How? By constant practice and detachment. So you can see here like abhyasena and vairagya. So what is vairagya? Vairagya means detachment, and abhyasena means practice. So to control the mind, we need these two things. One is we have to detach ourselves from sense objects. Like we read, 2 days ago, Hem Jagannath Prabhu, he was treating that verse. What was that? Vidya Vina. 1 second. Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavajam Rasopiyasya Param Drishtva Nivartante. Though the embodied soul may restrict it from sense enjoyment, the taste of the sense objects remains. But by ceasing such engagements and by experiencing a higher taste, one is fixed in consciousness. So what is saying here, like, the sense objects remain, like, but one has to detach himself from those sense objects. And how is that done? And for that we have to practice. Now let's look at anything, even in the material world, everything needs practice. And this is a very subtle thing, like refraining yourself from sense objects is a very subtle thing, and therefore much harder. Let's take the simple example of, like, if you want to type. When you first type, your fingers, like, you probably type, you have to look at the keyboard, and then your fingers go very slowly. But after, like, you have practiced it for, like, say like a month or something, you probably no longer need to look at the keyboard. You can just, just subconsciously carry on. So similarly, like you can train your mind to be detached from the senses, to not, and that requires practice. So you can see, like, yeah, now Srila Prabhupada, like, what he's done here, in our case, and in those who follow, like, he has actually created this, he's given us this he's given us this 4 regulative principles, and then he has set up some rules and regulations for people in ISKCON to follow. So what are the 4 regulative principles? The 4 regulative principles, what do they do? First is like the first regulative principle is no meat eating. Okay, I mean, they're all equally important. They're not in any particular order. So what happened? The first is no meat eating, then no illicit sex, no gambling, and what is the 4th one? Oh my God, I don't remember the 4 regulative principles.
No intoxication.
What's that?
No intoxication.
No intoxicants. That's right. Yeah. So what happens is, like, the first thing is, like, no meat eating. Okay, like, if you're killing animals, what happens? You're gratifying you're gratifying. First of all, like, it's destroying one of the religions of Dharma. Like, Dharma, or eternal religion, has 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are like truth, austerity, cleanliness, and compassion. So when you're indulging in meat eating, you're actually you're destroying one of the pillars of Dharma, which is compassion. All right, and not only that, you're gratifying your senses, like, the sense of eating with the flesh of other animals. You're eating it just because it's tasty for you. So you're contaminating your sense of the tongue when you are actually eating. And second thing is, like, let's take the example, the 4 regulated. The second one, gambling. So what happens when you're actually trying to, like, let's say a lottery, or like playing cards, or you're trying to get some gain with very little work or no work at all. So that's dishonest, and actually that increases the propensity to cheat. So, and we can see, like, the classic example is in the battle of the whole battle of Kurukshetra happened, because of the gambling game, where the Kauravas cheated on the Pandavas, and the rest is history. Like, the whole Mahabharata battle happened because of that. And what is the next one? The next one we're coming to is meat eating. I went to meat eating, then I went to gambling, then intoxication. What happens to what happens when one does an intoxication? It just clouds the mind, and when the mind is clouded, the intelligence cannot act properly. It is again when the mind is, it's again like controlled by the senses again. So any form of intoxication, actually, it just gets you high, and high. When you get high, you feel like like everything is like under your control, and then you can do whatever you want. So that's how intoxication affects you. Like, again, you get into like your sense, get into sense gratification. And the 4th thing is like illicit sex. So what happens when you engage in illicit sex? Sex is something given to us by the Lord, for creating Krishna conscious progeny. It's not for something like we just, actually sex makes you identify with the body more than anything else. So all these 4 regulative principles, if you follow, they help you in controlling the senses to a great degree. The other thing, like Srila Prabhupada said, for all the devotees, what is that? Devotees should start their day at like 4:30 in the a.m. at the Brahma Muhurta, which is the most auspicious time. And what they should do, they should come, and they should come for Mangalarti. They come for Mangalarti, then after Mangalarti, they have their time, they chant. Once they finish chanting, they go, they take the Shringar Darshan, then they go for their work. And after work in the evening, what do? They listen to the Bhagavad Gita. and then read Srila Prabhupada's books before they get up next day. So we can see, like yesterday we talked about the the 5 senses, like the 5 senses for perception and 5 working senses. So if you take like all these activities, like which Srila Prabhupada has set up, you'll see like all these senses are being engaged in a very, like when you go for Mangalarti, what happens? Your eyes are looking at the divine, at the beautiful form of the Lord, in the temple, and then you're singing the Samsara Dava. You're listening. Your sense of hearing and your sense of, again, the tongue is engaged in service of the Lord. And if you're clapping your hands, you're dancing, again, 2 of your working senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Then again, the next thing you do is chanting, like, then there you're like, you're doing Shravanam and Kirtanam. So again, your sense of hearing, or your sense of, and your tongue is involved in the service of the Lord. And then when you smell at the Aarti, when you smell the flowers offered to the Lord, and the dhoop, incense stick, which is offered to the Lord, your sense of the nose is engaged in the service of the Lord. Then later on, after you hear the Bhagavatam after the chanting. So again, you're listening. It's like Shravanam, which is engaging your ears in the service of the Lord. So, and then you go out for work. There you're again engaged. You're engaging all your working senses, because whatever work you're doing, you're getting the Lakshmi or act, and that has to be used again in other Krishna conscious ways. Like the brahmacharis or people living in the temple, what would they do? They would engage in various activities in the temple, like cooking, cleaning, preparing bhoga for the Lord, like Raj Bhog and Vaikalika Bhoga and all those kinds of things. And what do the grahasthas and people living outside the temple do? They go out, and whatever money they earn, that money has to be used like in supporting like temple activities, bringing up their families in Krishna conscious ways. So you can see all the working senses in this case are like engaged in the service of the Lord. So again, and then what happens in the evening? Again, you listen to the Bhagavad Gita, where you're actually, Shri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if you study the Bhagavad Gita, you're worshiping me with your intelligence. So that happened. And then we get up for the next day. Thus we see like Srila Prabhupada, he's made this entire thing, so all our senses are engaged in service of the Lord. So that way we come to this. What is that? We read about like Maharaj Ambarish. How did he use his senses? King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, engaging his words in describing the abode of Lord. So that's what we are doing when we are actually listening to the Bhagavatam. His hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord. That's what happens when we go for Mangalarti or any arti in the temple. His body in touching the body of the devotee, and that's what happens when we hug other devotees. His nostrils smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, and we do that in the temple. His tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him. Again, we do that when we go to the temple. We eat prasadam. His legs in traveling to the holy place of the Lord, where this temple is situated. We do that. His head in offering obeisance unto the Lord. We do that when we bow before the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. We do that again when we actually work and get our Lakshmi and give our Lakshmi and engage for various different temple activities. So if we follow, like Srila Prabhupada is trying to make us follow in the footsteps of Ambarish Maharaj. So we can see that like if you just follow this. If you just follow what Srila Prabhupada has taught us, we follow the 4 regulative principle and go by the rules and regulation he has created, we can, like other day I was asking Hari Kishore Prabhu, like, can we become Sthitapragyas? Do we have to be? We are on the way to become Sthitapragyas. Now think about it, like like out of 1,000 men, only few come to realize Krishna. That's I forgot that Sahasreshu. I don't remember the verse, but like out of thousands of men, only a few know him in reality. So think about it, like the population of the world is like about 7.8 million, and out of that, how many are like vegetarians? The approximate is like 400 million people are vegetarians in the world, and out of that, how many of them actually offer their prasad, like prasadam to the Lord and eat them? So as such, like the devotees are like going to be always like a very minority of the people. We're never going to become mainstream. So you can understand, like we are among those Sahasreshu, like the devotees. But that is if you follow the steps of what Srila Prabhupada has taught us. So I think we're already getting over time. So it's just 10 minutes left. So I think I'll finish here. I mean, we can just please ask me some questions. I mean, if you have, Prabhu. Thank you. Any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
If no one has a question, perhaps I could ask one. If you could
Prabhu.
please elaborate on the diet, vegetarian, and then you expressed that it was meat eating is loss of compassion, the pillar of dharma. So
Yes,
perhaps
Prabhu.
if you could please explain the difference between vegetarian, which is not forfeiting compassion, and by the bhoga. What's the difference between bhoga prasadam and just regular vegetarian?
Prabhuji, like Prabhuji, yeah, that's a very question. A lot of like people like they come and bring up this point. Of course, being vegetarian is better than like being a meat eater, because first of all, like like we know, like plants have senses. Plants have senses, but it's like very subdued. And again, like animals are supposed to be sentient, and as far as plants are concerned, I mean, there is some degree of like people say, well, like plants can other plants as well. They have some kind of a communication with other plants, and there is some kind of but in any case, this is not as strong as animals. So it's like, what do you call it? It's still lower in form of evolution. I mean, I don't mean by the, I'm not going by the theory of evolution of Darwin. I'm saying like, as life evolves, like, as you go for among the 84 billion species of life, you have like the lower creatures with lesser, lesser consciousness and higher. So plants have less, but it's still said like in the Bhagavad Gita, it says like even eating them is a sin, right? Just like, but whatever has been offered to Krishna, when you eat something, if it's been offered to Krishna, he takes whatever has been offered as sacrifice to Krishna. Then I mean, we have to do it, of course. Like we can offer anything, but if you don't, it has to be offered with love and devotion. That's very important. So if it's offered with love and devotion, then he takes away the sin, and then we can, take part in the prasadam. Again, what I was gonna make a point, like it has to be offered with love, and we have to make sure, like we indulge in minimum violence. First of all, when we're taking only plants, we're indulging in minimum violence, and then we are offering it to the Lord before actually partaking it, before actually eating it. So, if you follow what Srila Prabhupada has taught us, like the proper way of offering bhoga to the Lord and then taking it, then honoring it, I think you're okay. Srila Prabhupada said we are okay, so we are okay. Otherwise, like the Bhagavatam says, for one living entity, other living entity is food. So a lot of people justify meat eating just using that same verse. Like, I don't remember the verse again. So it's for one living entity, other living entity. So a lot of people justify meat eating, quoting that verse from the Bhagavatam, but they don't understand the context in which it's actually being spoken. So so we have to see in what context it's being spoken. You have to keep violence to a minimum, and whatever you're eating should be offered to the Lord first. And again, Lord says, if you offer flower water or leaf water or fruit to me, with love, I accept. He doesn't say that if you offer anything to me, I accept. He very specifically says leaf, water, or fruit. I hope I've answered your question, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Very nice.
Anybody else has anything to ask? Any reflections, comments, concerns? Yeah, Namarupa Prabhu is posted that verse. You can check. Namarupa Prabhu, we can recite that if you want. Okay.
You can do it, Sameshwar Prabhu. You can
Yeah, it says that Agastani Sagastanam Abadani Chastupadam Chaduspadam. It's got little font. Falguni Tatra Mahadam Jivo Jivasya Jivanam. Yeah, it's the same translation.
If somebody can post a translation, Amru Prabhu, if you can, be nice. Do you want to read it, Prabhuji? Sameshwar Prabhu?
Let me find out the. Yeah, it's there. Oh, it's there. Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged. The weak are the subsistence of the strong. And the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. Exactly, you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people use this verse to justify meat eating. Like, so the Bhagavatam allows we can eat meat. So I've heard it in Kerala, like many people saying that. But they don't say in what context it was spoken. So any other questions, Prabhuji?
Okay, so let us 7:56. Thank you, Subal Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Thank you all, dear devotees, on this New Year's Eve, joining and taking time to listen and realize and understand the science of God, the Bhagavad Gita, understanding how senses works. It's very important. These verses are not just simply written somewhere. No, these are the words from the mouth of the Lord. These are the words originally spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can imagine that, how powerful it is, how much value it is in these verses, in these words of the Supreme Lord. So that's why it's anything that if you take a little bit, even if little bit, if you take, it's a nectar, it's an ocean of mercy, and it is the science. And if you apply it in our life, this gives us tremendous results in our life, tremendous progress in our life, tremendous satisfaction in our life, happiness in our life, peace in our life. Bhagavad Gita is speaking throughout these various ways. And these are the steps. These are the steps that we can, gradually progress from our gross bodily and sensual and mental and come to the state. That's what is today Prabhuji is saying, the steady intelligence. The steady intelligence, only on that steady intelligence, and we can subdue all the lower taste. That's our sensual is considered as the lower taste, that the mind, and the mind is considered that the lower taste of the intelligence, and then altogether grows. It's mentioned that one who is in the gross broadly platform is foolish, mode of ignorance, and the bodily and the sensual platform is considered as the mode of ignorance. And on the mental platform, that's the mind, that we always turbulent mind, which is considered as the mode of passion. And then it's mentioned that one who is in the intelligence is mode of goodness. So then we have to come to the steady intelligence or transcendental intelligence, or is called as prajna. There is a different state of this buddhi, and prajna comes in the top. So these are the ways that we can control our mind. By controlling the mind only, we can come to that steady intelligence or sthira buddhi. And only in that sthira buddhi that we can always determine to and discriminate and determine to go further into the sthita pragya, transcendental situation. Otherwise, it's very difficult. So thank you all so much for joining in such a wonderful, wonderful section. Please continue to join. We have this section every day. And also we are planning to keep this on Saturday after the New Year. So you all can join. So let us pay our obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. And before that, wish you all a very happy and Krishna conscious New Year. All of you, from all of us. And wish you a very, very happy Krishna conscious New Year ahead. And let's pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundarji. Please give us the opportunity to serve sincerely at the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. And our prayer is that there is not even a single point of time, oh Lord, please don't go away from us. Please give us the opportunity to remember you, to worship you, engage us in your lotus feet. That's only perfection. That's only our prayer. Supreme Lord, please give us the opportunity to serve you. With that note, wish you all a happy New Year ahead, 2021. And let us pay our obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubhyo evacha patitanam
Nam
pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo
Vaishnavebhyo
namaha.
Namo Namo
Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Vrinda ki
Jai.
jai.
Grandhiraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaura
One thing I wanted to
Premanande.
say,
Hari
sorry,
Bo.
Hari
we have
Om.
we have calendars